Hey guys, good morning. Hope y'all are doing all right. Sorry I haven't gotten the video out before now. I have not been feeling well at all this past weekend. But anyway, this is going along with what the PowerPoints have discussed. Hopefully you've got a chance to look at those. If you haven't, make sure to look over those first to give you some context as far as what we're going to be talking about here. But we're moving into macroeconomics, and so we're looking at the economy as a whole. Right, so not just individual businesses like we looked at for supply and demand, and not just market structures and types of business organizations, but we're looking at how the economy operates as a whole, and what we kind of use to gauge economic success. Is the economy growing? How well is it growing? How much of that is real growth versus things like inflation? Okay, how we can calculate for downfalls in the economy, such as the unemployment rate, so on and so forth. So this is what it's going to be kind of covering. And for the first part, I want to kind of just put it on these type of terms. If we were to look at the economy as kind of this as kind of like a linear graph, right? And you have, as you go throughout your economy, you'll have peaks and troughs. You'll have high points and low points. Times where the economy is doing very well. Times where the economy is doing very poorly. And hopefully, it kind of balances out. All right. Ideally, what you would want in a nation, what you would want for your economy, is for the economy to have moderate peaks and moderate troughs. And what I mean by that, these being your peaks, these being your troughs, if you can minimize the magnitude of the shifts, all right, that's a healthy economy. If you can minimize how far this economy will dip during a low point in the business cycle, if you can minimize how rapidly it shoots up during any point in the business cycle, that is going to be beneficial for the economy as a whole. Okay, and I'm going to go into reasons why that is here in just a second. But if you look at the economy as it's operating here, and we're just going to pretend that this is just a snippet of, let's say, a quarter of a year, okay, where the economy has had 2 periods of high points, all right, basically 2 periods of low points. And we're going to take a look at what we could have possibly seen happening in those times. So here we go. All right, first of all, if you were looking at this and this was representing the economy, the first thing to make a note of, all right, the times where you had your highest points of operation in the economy, these are your peaks, all right, troughs down here. Okay. Okay, so you got your peaks, you got your troughs. When you have an economy that operates like this, it's very important to identify, okay, what are the operations, what were we doing, what was happening in the economy at the highest points when the economy was doing very well, what was happening at the lowest points when it wasn't doing as great, what was happening with businesses during that time period, and again, how much of it is real true growth, and how much of it is kind of inflated, no pun intended here. All right, so there's several different things that economists will use to kind of gauge that, okay? We're going to talk about the economic indicators that economists use, things such as GDP to measure growth, things such as the inflation rate to, again, account for how much growth the economy is experiencing that is real growth, true growth, and also the unemployment rate, because it doesn't really benefit an economy to have massive growth if the economy is growing, but we had high periods of unemployment. A lot of people that do not have a job, can't find work. Okay, so these are just your general points, your basic points on a particular business cycle. Okay, so let's say that the economy had been trending upwards, things were looking good. Okay. And then all of a sudden things started to trend back downwards. What could cause something like that to happen? Okay, so basically what you're experiencing here is when the economy is going up, right? When the business cycle is experiencing a boom, when the economy is growing, you generally have expansion happening. All right, expansion is occurring during this time period. Expansion in the economy. All right, and I'm gonna put it over here as well. Okay, basically what that means is that the economy is growing. Okay, A lot of different things could be factoring into this. You could have the private sector of the economy that is doing very well. You have a lot of businesses that are reinvesting in their company. They're pouring more money into their company to continue to produce more of their goods. They're pumping a lot of goods out. They're producing a lot. They're hiring a lot of people to make up for shortfalls in their ability to be able to produce. Okay, so you have low periods of you have low unemployment generally during this time period. The economy is expanding. But if you think about it, it's not just one company that is expanding. All right, it's not just one section of the economy generally that is expanding. This could be happening in multiple different areas. All right, you could be talking about thousands of companies that are experiencing expansion. You could also be probably coupling that with government incentives, things such as low taxes, low regulations, deregulation of certain industries. That could cause expansion. We're going to get into that here later on. The Federal Reserve, all right, they are our nation's bank. Again, we're going to be covering them later, but they are basically in control of your monetary policy, the nation's monetary policy, and that has to do with the money supply. And so they could have, what is called a loose money policy, where they are going to be basically opening up the funds for America, opening up the money supply, I should say, okay? Loosening their grip on the money supply, making it easier to come by money. Because just like everything else, our currency, our nation's dollar, has a supply and demand that is going to be attached to it. Again, we'll cover that later, but all of this could be factoring into reasons why the economy is expanding, okay? And as the economy expands, okay, you have the Federal Reserve that is releasing money into the economy. You have government incentive programs such as, we could have discretionary spending that is happening at the government level that is hopefully trying to stimulate the economy in some way. So government spending money into the economy, spending money into the private sector. They could have low taxes, again, deregulation of industry. Many businesses experiencing the benefits of all of these things. It's easier to borrow money. All right, they have more money available. There's lower taxes. They're pouring that money back into their economy. More people have money, so those people are spending it into the economy. So, all of this is leading to a mass expansion, okay? But remember supply and demand. The more that you have of something, the less valuable it is, okay? Same thing with money. The more money that gets poured into the economy, the less valuable that money becomes. And what that basically is in economics terms is inflation. Okay, so you have, during these periods of expansion, you have inflation occurring. So more money is going into the economy, all right, inflation is occurring. Generally, a healthy inflation rate is around 3%, but you'll probably see that increasing above that 3% mark as you get closer to each one of these peaks. And so this is why the economy just can't continue to grow, right? We have to have these moderate peaks and troughs. You have to keep inflation in check. Okay, so usually at some point in these peaks, all right, either through our monetary policy or through our fiscal policy, the government is going to handle the fiscal policy, Federal Reserve handles the monetary policy. They are usually going to try to act in some way to limit the impact of inflation, okay? And they might constrict the economy, okay? And what I mean by that, you might have higher taxes being placed. You might have a tight money policy coming into effect from the Fed, from the Federal Reserve. As it's harder to borrow money, as it's harder to come by money, as you have higher taxes that are going to be put in place, there might be a decrease in the amount of expansion that we see among businesses. People are less likely to spend money just because there's less money to go around. If you talk about taxes that are going to be put in place, higher taxes that go into place, generally we either see wages stay about the same, which is almost 100% of the time. Generally, you won't see wages rising, but wages will stay about the same. Very rarely do you see wages decrease, but at the same time you might see heavy layoffs because to make up for the profit loss that these companies are experiencing, companies might have to lay off their workers. And so we see basically the opposite of what we saw with expansion. We see possibly higher taxes issued by the government. We might see regulation on businesses. We might see excise taxes placed on certain goods. We may see a tight money policy put into effect, and the way that you'll see that, by the way, with the Federal Reserve is through interest rates. Okay, if the interest rates are high, you're probably less likely to take out a loan or try to go to the bank and get extra money to either spend back in your business or to spend in your personal life, to buy a home, to buy a car, or whatever it is. You're less likely to do that if the interest rates are high. Okay, and what that's meant to do is to shrink up, to tighten up the money supply over time. And so if you're talking about, during this period, right in here, all right, during the peak period, the government issuing higher taxes, the Federal Reserve issuing higher interest rates, banks less likely, or actually people less likely to take out major loans because of the high interest rates. People saving more than they're spending, again, either because wages are staying about the same, or you might have seen a family, maybe a husband or a wife of a family get laid off. All of that is going to lead to a decrease in the money supply. All of that leads to people spending less into the economy. And so we have a period of contraction. Same thing over here, right? Period of contraction. Okay, so the economy is constricting again, right? You have the economy that is going to be shrinking up. Okay, you have the economy that is going to be drawing in that money, checking inflation, all right, making sure inflation doesn't get out of control. And this is a natural cycle. Okay, now what is beneficial, and the reason why I kind of led with this, is it's vitally important for our nation's health, for our economic health, that these peaks and troughs are as moderate as possible. I drew this kind of largely just so that we could, actually see this stuff playing out, and y'all could actually see what I'm writing on the board. But ideally, if I just put it up here, ideally you'd want to see something like this, right? Where you have very moderate peaks, very moderate troughs, and you don't have a lot of the negative effects of either high inflation during an expansion period or heavy layoffs and things like that during a contraction period, high interest rates and things like that. So ideally, you would want these peaks and troughs to be as moderate as possible, okay? So this is the basic business cycle and kind of what you can expect to see happening, okay? Definitely go back over this video at least one more time, kind of take notes as you go, because we did not have actual notes on this in the PowerPoint. This is something I kind of just go over real quick in the class. So definitely make a note of this. All right, again, this is the business cycle in an economy. This is what you could expect to see happening at each point during an expansion or contraction period, and why we see that happening, okay? As we go, all right, and hopefully you've reviewed those PowerPoints, but as we go throughout the notes, definitely think back to this as we cover fiscal policy, as we cover monetary policy. Think back to how that is going to be impacting the economy. All right, this is all relative to how economists kind of gauge the health of the economy, how well we're doing, and again, real-time growth. Okay, that is it for now.